The tension in Congress reached a boiling point today during a fiery debate on the proposed climate action bill. Representative Ilhan Omar, a prominent voice for progressive environmental policies, clashed with Senator Ted Cruz in a jaw-dropping exchange that left the chamber in stunned silence. It began when Cruz questioned the bill's practicality, labeling it a radical, job-killing fantasy. Omar fired back immediately, accusing Cruz of deliberately ignoring the science. "Your refusal to act is costing lives, Senator," she exclaimed, her voice ringing across the hall. As Cruz attempted to retort, Omar interrupted with a scathing remark. "You're a fossil, defending fossil fuels. Step into the future or get out of the way." Gasps erupted among the assembled lawmakers as Cruz shot back. "I'll take facts over theatrics any day, Representative." The exchange quickly devolved into a shouting match, with Omar branding Cruz as shill for polluters, and Cruz accusing Omar of grandstanding for social media likes. The heated confrontation was only diffused when the presiding officer called for order, but the damage had already been done. Outside the chamber, reporters swarmed both lawmakers for comments. Omar doubled down, stating, "It's time for bold action. If that means calling out those who stand in the way, so be it." Cruz, visibly agitated, told the press, "This is about protecting American jobs, not pandering to the Green New Deal crowd." Social media exploded with reactions, with hashtags like #FossilGate and #ClimateShowdown trending within hours. Some hailed Omar as a climate hero, while others criticized her tactics as unprofessional. Cruz's supporters applauded his stand against what they called radical leftist overreach. The debate over the climate action bill has never been more polarized, and this explosive incident has only added fuel to the fire. Whether Omar's bold approach will galvanize support or alienate potential allies remains to be seen. The confrontation between Ilhan Omar and Ted Cruz over the climate bill began as a passionate debate but quickly escalated into a fiery exchange. Omar, visibly frustrated, accused Cruz of ignoring the overwhelming evidence of climate change. "Your denial is not just dangerous, it's an act of betrayal against future generations," she declared. Cruz, unfazed, dismissed her concerns, arguing that the proposed reforms would devastate the economy and burden hard-working Americans. "You're playing politics with people's livelihoods," he retorted. Omar, undeterred, fired back. "This isn't about politics, Ted. It's about survival. Your refusal to act makes you complicit in the crisis." The debate reached its peak when Omar labeled Cruz a fossil, symbolizing his outdated views on energy and environmental policy. Cruz shot back with a pointed jab. "Better to be a fossil than a hypocrite pushing policies that destroy American jobs while you fly around in private jets." The tension in the room was palpable. Congressional colleagues looked on in shock as the two continued their verbal sparring. The moderator's repeated calls for order went unheard. By the time the session ended, the confrontation had overshadowed the policy discussion, turning into a spectacle that quickly made headlines. Public reactions were immediate and polarized. Progressives rallied behind Omar, praising her boldness and framing the clash as a symbol of the urgent need for climate action. Hashtags like #FossilCruz and #ClimateJustice trended on social media, with activists sharing clips of Omar's fiery remarks. On the other hand, conservatives defended Cruz, viewing him as a protector of American industries under siege from radical environmentalism. The media frenzy amplified the incident, with news outlets dissecting the clash and framing it as a microcosm of the broader ideological divide in American politics. Late-night talk show hosts and internet meme creators added fuel to the fire, turning the moment into viral content that dominated the news cycle for days. As the debate spilled into the public sphere, environmental organizations seized the moment to intensify their campaigns. They used Omar's impassioned defense of the climate bill to rally support and draw attention to the stakes of the proposed legislation. Meanwhile, Cruz's allies launched a counter-campaign, emphasizing the potential economic fallout of the bill and accusing Democrats of prioritizing ideology over practicality. The incident also highlighted the challenges of bipartisanship in addressing climate change. Moderate lawmakers found themselves under increased pressure to take a stand, with both sides accusing them of avoiding the tough decisions required to confront the crisis. The fate of the climate bill remained uncertain, with the heated exchange between Omar and Cruz serving as a stark reminder of the deep divisions in Congress. In the weeks that followed, the confrontation became a defining moment for both politicians. Omar's passionate advocacy solidified her status as a progressive icon, while Cruz's staunch opposition reinforced his role as a champion for conservative values. The clash not only shaped the narrative around the climate bill but also underscored the broader ideological battles that continue to shape American politics. As the dust settled from the heated congressional session, both Ilhan Omar and Ted Cruz became central figures in an evolving national conversation. Omar doubled down on her advocacy, holding press conferences to stress the urgency of climate reform. She framed her clash with Cruz as a defining moment for progressives. We're fighting for our planet's survival against those clinging to outdated, destructive ideologies. Meanwhile, Cruz used the confrontation to galvanize his base. At a rally in Texas, he addressed supporters, saying, "We're under attack by radical socialism disguised as climate policy. But I won't let Washington bureaucrats destroy our economy for their green agenda." The divide grew starker in the following weeks. Environmental groups released a series of ads using clips from Omar's fiery remarks to rally public support for the bill. Meanwhile, conservative PACs funded campaigns highlighting the potential job losses tied to the proposed legislation. Media outlets across the spectrum dissected the confrontation endlessly. Liberal commentators praised Omar's courage, while conservative pundits labeled her rhetoric extreme and dangerous. The exchange became symbolic of the larger cultural and political wars gripping the nation. In the aftermath, town halls across the country were consumed by debates about the climate bill. At one event in Minnesota, Omar faced both cheers and jeers as she laid out the stakes of inaction. "This isn't about politics," she told the crowd. "It's about protecting our children's future." At a similar event in Texas, Cruz invoked images of struggling workers and failing businesses to criticize the bill. "We can't destroy the foundation of this nation's prosperity for a dream that ignores reality," he declared, drawing loud applause. The fallout extended beyond Congress. On social media, activists organized protests and rallies supporting the bill, often citing Omar's bold confrontation. Opposing groups staged counter-protests, emphasizing the economic risks Cruz had warned about. In Washington, the clash had tangible consequences. Moderate lawmakers, previously undecided on the climate bill, faced immense pressure from both sides. Private meetings became battlegrounds for lobbying efforts, with each camp seeking to sway the critical votes needed to pass or block the legislation. The international community also weighed in. Climate scientists from around the globe expressed solidarity with Omar, pointing to mounting evidence of global warming's catastrophic impacts. Meanwhile, economic analysts abroad echoed Cruz's concerns, warning of potential trade implications if the U.S. adopted aggressive climate measures. The emotional weight of the confrontation began to take a toll. Omar spoke candidly in interviews about the backlash she faced, including threats and harassment. "This isn't easy, but standing up for what's right never is," she said. Cruz, too, found himself under scrutiny. Reports surfaced about connections between his campaign and fossil fuel companies, sparking accusations of corporate influence. He denied the claims, calling them desperate attempts to silence dissent. As the vote on the climate bill approached, tension in Washington reached a fever pitch. Lawmakers braced for a showdown, knowing the outcome could reshape the nation's energy policy for decades. The lingering echoes of Omar and Cruz's confrontation loomed large over the proceedings, shaping both the debate and its perception. In the end, the climate bill narrowly passed in the House but faced an uncertain future in the Senate. Omar celebrated the victory as a step forward, while Cruz vowed to continue the fight. "This battle is far from over," he declared. Across the country, citizens debated the implications of the bill and the broader political climate. For some, the confrontation between Omar and Cruz symbolized hope and progress. For others, it represented division and discord. Historians would later mark the event as a turning point in the nation's environmental policy, a moment when the stakes of inaction became too great to ignore. Yet, the scars of the conflict remained, a reminder of the cost of pursuing change in a deeply divided nation. Omar and Cruz's paths continued to intersect in the years that followed, their ideological battles shaping not just climate policy but the broader trajectory of American politics. For better or worse, their fiery exchange became a defining moment in a critical chapter of the nation's history. As the climate bill progressed through the Senate, Omar ramped up her public appearances, framing her argument as an existential battle against greed and inaction. "We are at the edge of a cliff," she said during a town hall in Minneapolis. "And some leaders, like Senator Cruz, are pushing us closer with every passing day." Cruz, for his part, capitalized on his growing support from climate skeptics and business leaders. During a televised town hall in Houston, he accused Omar of weaponizing fear to push un-American policies. "We need facts, Not alarmism, he declared, receiving thunderous applause. The confrontation between Omar and Cruz also became a flashpoint in schools, workplaces, and households nationwide. Heated debates broke out on social media, with hashtags like #OmarForEarth and #CruzForJobs trending simultaneously. The ideological split seemed deeper than ever. Meanwhile, the climate bill inspired a new wave of political ads. Progressive groups leaned heavily into Omar's fiery rhetoric, featuring clips of her confronting Cruz with the tagline, "It's time for bold leadership." Conservative organizations countered with ads highlighting Cruz's warnings about job losses, calling him the voice of reason. The media frenzy continued unabated, with pundits dissecting every word and gesture from both politicians. Some praised Omar's passion, calling it a rallying cry for the younger generation. Others criticized her approach as divisive and counterproductive, claiming it alienated potential allies. In Congress, the stakes were growing. Moderate senators faced immense pressure to choose a side, with lobbyists swarming Capitol Hill. Private meetings often turned contentious, as lawmakers argued over the bill's details and implications. The strain was visible on both Omar and Cruz. Omar, in an emotional interview, admitted the personal toll of the debate. "I've received threats, I've been called names, but I refuse to back down," she said. Cruz, too, acknowledged the intensity of the situation, telling reporters, "This isn't just politics, it's about the soul of our nation." Protests erupted nationwide, with climate activists organizing sit-ins outside government buildings and energy workers rallying against the bill. The divide was palpable, with each side accusing the other of jeopardizing America's future. As the bill's Senate vote neared, the rhetoric escalated. In a fiery Senate speech, Omar directly addressed Cruz, saying, "Your refusal to act is a betrayal of every American child who dreams of a livable future." Cruz responded in kind, accusing Omar of demonizing hard-working Americans for political gain. The public, meanwhile, seemed exhausted yet deeply invested. Polls showed a stark divide, with support for the bill split along party lines. Independents remained a crucial swing group, and both sides scrambled to win them over. The debate also drew international attention. World leaders weighed in, with some praising Omar's bold stance and others expressing sympathy for Cruz's economic concerns. The global spotlight further amplified the stakes. The bill's potential passage raised questions about its implementation. Would it achieve its ambitious goals? Could the economy withstand the proposed changes? Both supporters and critics acknowledged the risks, though their assessments differed wildly. As the Senate vote finally took place, tensions reached a fever pitch. Protesters gathered outside the Capitol, chanting slogans and waving signs. Inside, the atmosphere was equally charged, with lawmakers delivering impassioned speeches for and against the bill. When the final tally was announced, the bill passed by a razor-thin margin. Omar celebrated the victory as a historic step forward, while Cruz vowed to continue the fight. "This isn't over," he told reporters, "not by a long shot." In the aftermath, the political landscape shifted. Progressives hailed the bill as a landmark achievement, while conservatives mobilized to challenge its provisions in court. The clash between Omar and Cruz became emblematic of the broader cultural and political divide. The episode also had lasting effects on both politicians. Omar emerged as a leading voice on climate issues, while Cruz solidified his status as a champion of traditional conservative values. Their rivalry became a defining feature of American politics in the years to come. In the days following the passage of the climate bill, both Ilhan Omar and Ted Cruz found themselves under intense public scrutiny. Omar, hailed as a hero by progressives, faced accusations from her detractors that she had prioritized her political agenda over unity. Cruz, while celebrated in conservative circles, endured criticism for his combative approach, which some argued alienated moderate voters. The fallout from the debate seeped into other aspects of American political discourse. Schools began incorporating discussions about the climate bill into their civics curricula, prompting lively debates among students. This generational dialogue underscored the widening gap between younger Americans and older, more conservative constituents. Meanwhile, fundraising efforts surged for both camps. Omar's campaign received record-breaking donations from environmental groups, while Cruz capitalized on the uproar to secure backing from energy sector executives. Both politicians used their newfound resources to double down on their messaging. Omar embarked on a nationwide tour, hosting rallies in key states to ensure the bill's provisions were effectively implemented. At these events,
She often invoked Cruz by name, painting him as the embodiment of corporate greed.
"We beat him once," she declared at a rally in Chicago, "and we'll do it again." Cruz responded with his own counter-tour, focusing on states where the climate bill's economic impact was most acutely felt. He warned voters of what he called the looming job apocalypse and pledged to fight for repeals and adjustments to the legislation. Media outlets continued to dissect the personalities and strategies of both politicians. Late-night talk shows turned their fiery exchange into comedy gold, while political commentators debated the broader implications of their rivalry. Some viewed the Omar-Cruz clash as a microcosm of America's fractured political identity. The international reaction to the climate bill and its contentious passage varied. European leaders applauded Omar's efforts, while leaders from oil-exporting nations sided with Cruz. This dichotomy further emphasized the global stakes of America's domestic policies. Within Congress, the bill's aftermath created unexpected alliances and fractures. Some moderate Republicans began collaborating with progressives on related environmental issues, much to Cruz's chagrin. On the other hand, conservative Democrats found themselves increasingly isolated within their party. The personal lives of Omar and Cruz also became the subject of public fascination. Omar's steadfast dedication to the climate cause earned her admiration but also led to concerns about burnout. Cruz, meanwhile, faced questions about his legacy and whether his staunch opposition had cost him future political opportunities. Protests and counter-protests became a regular occurrence outside both Omar's and Cruz's offices. Environmental activists staged sit-ins to demand even bolder reforms, while Cruz supporters organized rallies emphasizing energy independence and economic stability. The entertainment industry even weighed in, with a major studio announcing plans for a fictionalized drama inspired by the Omar-Cruz feud. The announcement sparked debates about the ethics of dramatizing real-life political events, particularly ones that had such tangible consequences. As weeks turned into months, the effects of the climate bill began to manifest. Renewable energy projects saw a surge in investment, but so did litigation from fossil fuel companies. The courts became the next battleground, with both sides preparing for drawn-out legal fights. Omar, undeterred, introduced a follow-up bill aimed at further curbing carbon emissions. Cruz labeled it an act of economic sabotage and vowed to rally opposition. The cycle of confrontation showed no signs of abating. Public opinion polls revealed a fascinating divide. While Omar's approval rating soared among young and progressive voters, Cruz remained a stalwart favorite among conservatives. The polarization mirrored broader societal trends, with little middle ground to be found. The climate bill also prompted a wave of grassroots activism. Inspired by Omar's passion, a new generation of environmentalists took to social media and local government meetings to advocate for change. Cruz's rhetoric, meanwhile, galvanized a growing coalition of free market advocates. The cultural impact of the Omar-Cruz clash extended to art and literature. Poets, musicians, and painters began exploring themes of division, urgency, and the environment. Their works highlighted the emotional toll of America's political battles. Despite their differences, Omar and Cruz did find themselves agreeing on one point. The debate had changed the landscape of American politics forever. In interviews, both acknowledged that the climate bill represented a turning point, though their interpretations of its significance were worlds apart. Political analysts began speculating about the future trajectories of both figures. Would Omar's star continue to rise, or would the challenges of implementing the bill tarnish her reputation? Could Cruz parlay his resistance into a presidential campaign, or would he be left behind by a changing GOP? As the 2026 midterm elections approached, both Omar and Cruz played pivotal roles in shaping their respective parties' platforms. Their influence ensured that the climate debate remained front and center, even as other issues vied for attention. The legacy of their confrontation lingered in the public consciousness. Historians began documenting the episode as a case study in American polarization, highlighting the stark contrasts in vision, values, and tactics.